Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz, a transparent and engaging conversational dive into meaningful topics impacting local government in Bismarck, North Dakota. Bismarck Insights is dedicated to removing barriers between the city of Bismarck and the citizens we serve every day.
Good morning and welcome to Bismarck Insights. I'm Mayor Mike Schmitz, and today I have with me Beth Demke from North Dakota's Gateway to Science, as we are talking to people this week who have just community involvement and who bring amenities to the community. And Beth, thank you for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
I'd just like to have you share with the audience a little bit about your background, what ultimately got you to be the executive director at Gateway to Science.
Well, my background probably would surprise people. I don't have a science background. My degree is in human resources and business, but what brought me into the Science Center realm really dates back to the early 90s when I joined Bismarck Mandan Junior Service League. And we were looking for projects, and Frank Cook, who was an associate professor of chemistry at Bismarck State College, brought a project with his lab assistant, Tina Stroh, who was a member of the JSL, brought this project of a hands-on children's museum or science center to us to consider. And I happened to be the president in 93, 94. And we started to consider, should we do this? And my family, we had young kids at the time, and Keith and I had taken our kids traveling like Frank had done with his family. And we thought we should have something like this in Bismarck. And I didn't know at the time there was nothing like it really in the entire state. So that's really how I got involved, is JSL took it on as a project. So we had this perfect partnership, I have described this before, of Junior Service League, which was this partnership or this group of volunteers, and then this other side of the partnership was science people. Mm-hmm. It was Frank Cook and all the science people that he brought together. And we worked together to build this science center. And when I say build, I mean open in a storefront at Gateway Mall. As I said, I was president of JSL. We all started as volunteers. So in 94, when we opened at the mall, for that first year, we were all volunteers. We hired our first employee as a college student who handled all of the daytime hours in the summertime. The rest of us had to start shuttling our school-age kids around during that summer. And then it was that fall that I was hired in 94, or 95, I mean. And then we've just kind of built from there. So my background in human resources and business has helped me to build the team, mm-hmm. and I've relied on the science people to build the programming. Yeah. And so that's why I call it that perfect partnership. Yeah.
I remember when you were in the Gateway Mall, I actually can visualize it, yeah. having walked by and our kids having meandered through,
sure.
Back in 94, 95, 96, 97. They probably aged out rather quickly because of where they're at. But so that just is quite an accomplishment. 30 years, you were at the ground floor.
At the very beginning, yeah.
And now, let's talk about what we've got going on.
Well, of course, we've had a couple of moves. We moved in 2005 from the mall space over to what is now Francis Leach High Prairie Arts and Science Complex, owned by the Park District. We helped to raise money to buy that facility, and we're kind of the anchor organization there. We didn't actually gain any space. We went from 2,500 square feet at the mall to about 2,500 square feet in that building as well. But what we gained there was audience. So we went from, being in a mall where, like you said, they dropped in, they might have, gone through while you're shopping. A little different than a destination place, right. Which is what High Prairie allowed us to be. So we grew the audience. We allowed people at the mall to see what we had in mind. Once they understood that, when we were at High Prairie, they came because of who we were and what we were doing. And then we started really thinking about the next space. And we explored lots of different options. And finally, it was very clear that what we really needed was a standalone science center, which was the original vision. But after exploring a number of other options, we thought we really need to do this. It's a standalone science center that serves the entire state, and that's what we're doing right now. So in about 2013 is when we really, in earnest, started to look into that.
And that's what has led to the new, it's not really new anymore, it's new, but
It's still newish, yes.
newish, but it's been there a few years now, but to the current facility, and that started, as you mentioned, it's 10 years in the making probably or more.
Yeah, it was
realistically.
about 10, because we opened in March of 2023. So it's been a little over a year and a half that we've been physically open in that space. But raise money and build exhibits and design the building, that takes time.
So let's talk a little bit, because I had some knowledge with having done some work around with you folks. The concept of the exhibits and how you came to determine size of the facility and what you need to put in, and thinking futuristic too. Mm-hmm. How did that all kind of come about?
Well, we have a very strong board that had a lot of input there, but we also expanded our exhibit design and planning committee. At some point, I think we probably had at least 50 different people serving in different ways. We wanted to concentrate on the science happening in North Dakota. So we looked at different areas that would demonstrate that science. We have transportation, we have energy, we have agriculture, we have medical. We also wanted something that would bring the littles in. So we have something called Science First there. We have a water space because everybody loves water. But we're also right on the river, so we wanted to bring that in. So once we figured out those areas, then we looked out into the industry and in our community and brought in subject matter experts. And so rather than me say, well, I love this exhibit, we would say, what's the science that needs to be demonstrated? And then how do we go about that? And we put out an RFP, and we ended up hiring the Science Museum of Minnesota out of St. Paul to help us to design those exhibits and come up with first the master plan, and then what will those exhibits be? And of course, lots of iterations getting to the final endpoint.
And knowing it's science, it's ever evolving, right?
Yes.
So how are we positioning, or you positioning, to be able to handle that changing environment?
Well, the beauty of hands-on is that it changes with the visitor. Imagine if you come to the Science Center as a 5-year-old, and what you understand, the foundation of knowledge that you have as a 5-year-old approaching an exhibit, you might just play with it because it's fun. And then as you get older and you start to understand more, you're going to bring a different set of knowledge every time you come in. So we've got that going for us to begin with. Mm-hmm. But we also look at cutting edge technologies. We're bringing in AI. We're bringing in the technology that is within each industry and changing our exhibits a little bit as we go along. And then of course we'll add new things as we need to as well. We didn't want to put in historical types of exhibits. We've got the Heritage Center that does an awesome job with that. We don't have a lot of live exhibits. We have a zoo that does an awesome job with that. So what we wanted to do is find our own niche and make sure that what we do complements those two cultural institutions, but is our own. And then of course we also, as I said, serve the entire state. So we load a lot of stuff into vans that replicate much of what we do in the galleries here in Bismarck, and we take them all over the state so that people that maybe can't get here will still have that opportunity.
So that probably is really kind of the core of some of the mission is to help educate and give opportunity to experience from whatever age a little person can start to do some of this.
Yes.
Through, I think, probably adults, right?
Yes, all the way through adult. And our core is education, but it's informal education. So a lot of times you're just having fun and you're enjoying a great day out with your family, and it's being absorbed without you really thinking about, oh look, I'm learning math today, or I'm learning science today. STEM has given us that opportunity to be more accessible. I mean, we still keep science in our name because everything is science. But when you think about the accessibility of informal, it just makes it a fun, engaging experience. And that's really what our goal is.
So as you would describe the audience that you're attracting, you mentioned, obviously we have the facility structure here in Bismarck, but the outreach is also important. So when you talk about loading up vans, do you go to all corners of the state?
We actually do, yeah. My education team will sometimes be all the way up in Williston, and in the same week all the way down in Hankinson, which is southeast, and in the other corners as well. We try to reach rural students as much as we possibly can, because those are the students that probably need us the most. But we'll also go to Fargo and Grand Forks and Minot and some of the other places as well, depending on who needs us.
As a result of that, do you find that when those families come to Bismarck that they end up visiting the center?
They actually do, yes, and we hear from them a lot. And a lot of times we'll get a field trip from those schools as well, particularly during the legislative session, because they'll be coming in for the legislature, and then they'll do a side trip to the Science Center as well. And that works really very nicely for those students to be able to see a little bit of political things and then science, at the same time. What I really love also is the multi-generational experience that we were able to offer. We see a lot of grandparents that bring their grandkids in, or 3 or 4 generations that'll come in all together, and letting kids see that adults can still learn, I think, is really important, because we don't know everything. You like to let kids, have kids think that that's the case, but it's not. We should all be learning at all times.
Well, I think if we aren't learning every day,
what's the point?
There's something probably not going well in our whole culture. Probably,
yep, I agree.
Right? So as we look at, you talk about STEM, and STEM has probably had different meanings to different people throughout time, but how do you find that this is helping our students and our adults learn those applications and maybe even become interested? Do we think it's really, I think it is, but I'll ask you, is it helping drive some of those new ideas?
Well, I would agree with you that it does. And let's just start with what is STEM. STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. When we first started in 1994, no one was talking about STEM. That was not an acronym being used at all. That came about in about 2009, 2010. A group of folks got together in Washington, D.C. and said, something is missing. When students are coming out of high school, out of college, they don't have the basic skills that we need in industry. And industry folks were saying this. What do we need to do? And we need to concentrate on those 4 areas. That's what was decided. Not just because of the technical pieces of it, but also because of what now we recognize as the 4 C's: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. And I know a lot of people want to put A in there for STEAM, and I don't have a problem with that, but if you just concentrate on STEM and those 4 C's, you've got it all. It's all wrapped up. All of those skills are very important for students to get into the workforce, but also just to be productive citizens when you think about it. Critical thinking is important for anyone gathering information, whether it's from the internet or from what they're reading, to be able to think about what they're gaining and saying, does that make sense to you? Because you can read all kinds of things, and sometimes it's true and sometimes it isn't, but if you have been taught how to think critically, you can make a determination. Creativity is very important, because otherwise you're stuck in a box, and you need to be able to think critically. Even Einstein was very interested in creativity. Right. Communication. If you're going to work on a team, and usually when, once you get out of school, and you're not just doing your own homework, you're working on a team. You've got to communicate. You've got to have people know what you're doing so they know how to do their job. Very important. And collaboration goes right along with that as well. So those 4 C's, as you're learning science, you can't do science in a box, in a bubble. You can't do technology without understanding how it's going to create and connect with other things that you're working on. Engineering, the whole design process, we teach that in just about every class or program that we do. And math, oh my goodness, people don't think they like math. You would never let someone tell you that they don't like to read or they don't read, but it's okay for us to say, I don't like math. Why is this? That's inappropriate. Yep. So that when we started to concentrate on STEM, I think people realized now it's accessible. Everyone can do STEM, whereas somehow science was scary and hard.
Yep. When I think of, we use the acronym STEM, obviously, but and you talked about the 4 C's, which are all very important. And in my mind, it doesn't really matter what your profession or trade is. All of those items have a touch point to that trade, whether it's
absolutely
actually in the construction, building a home, or if you're an electrician, or you're a pipe fitter, or a welder, or a mechanic.
Or an accountant.
Or an accountant. Well, accountants want to have A put in for a different reason, I think, into STEM, but it does. It just applies across the entire spectrum of jobs.
Absolutely. Yeah.
No matter what. And I think the fact that we have this hands-on ability, a gem for North Dakota right here in Bismarck, has been an incredible thing. And I know it was not an easy lift when you went through the process.
It wasn't easy, but anything that's worthwhile is worth working hard to get. And I didn't do it alone. We had a great team of architects and contractors and board members and team members, and everyone worked hard to get here because we felt that it was worthwhile and needed in our community. And we continue to work.
And so we have the Science Center here, and really going east, it would be to Minneapolis for the next type similar facility, correct?
That is true for now. I'm happy to see that there are other centers that are emerging here in North Dakota. There's one they're talking about in the Fargo-Moorhead area. There's a children's museum up in Grand Forks. There's, of course, a children's museum open now in Minot. And, I talked about collaboration. I do collaborate with those other centers. And, because I've been in the business for 30 years, they call on us.
Yep.
And I'm happy to help and to share knowledge. We're members of the Association of Science Technology Centers and the Association of Children's Museums, and both of those organizations are very much into collaboration and sharing of knowledge. And I like to share what we have at Bismarck's Gateway to Science, because it's very important to make sure that industry's philosophy is brought into North Dakota as well.
Sure.
Just, we were the first, but we're certainly not the only.
Okay. Well, what kind of challenges or opportunities do you see going forward for Gateway to Science, and just the whole concept of learning in the STEM environment? Sure.
Well, we, as a nonprofit, the challenge is always making sure that we've got enough funding to be able to continue the work. So there's always that. We're writing grants and making sure that we've got money's enough, looking for donations and that kind of thing. But I believe that if we do quality work, the support will be there, and that has proven to be the case. Opportunities are just endless. We have lots of chances to work with partners, and we've been developing lots of new partnerships within the state, within the region, and even nationally. We've brought in recently an AI education summit that we took up to Newtown with AI EDU, which is a nationwide technology company, TIES, which is the Institute for Excellence in STEM, is working with us to do more AI. We work with North Dakota Edutech, that's a state agency to do a lot of computer science types of programming. The Franklin Institute in Philadelphia has called on us for multiple programs, just recently brought us in for a new math program. So there's a lot of really great things that we get to do programming-wise. And you know, when we built the building, we actually made it a little smaller than the original plan, and we may need to make it bigger. We may need to expand. But before we would do that, we would want to make sure that we know exactly what else it needs to do.
Sure. Let's talk about the building a little bit. I mean, it's the Gateway to Science building, but I know you also host other things.
We do.
As a way to probably attract some interest, but what else does the building allow to happen?
Well, you know, when we built it, my goal, my hope was that everyone in this community would want to come into that building or have a reason to, for some reason, for something. And we do host things like weddings and graduation parties and conferences, corporate events, and robotics tournaments and science fairs and preschool discovery hour and all kinds of things. Yeah. So the space, when we developed it, we made sure that it had enough room to do what we needed to do, but also to invite community folks like that, which will support the mission, but also invite people to see the building, see what we do, and maybe come back to join us for that mission at some point as well.
Because I think I've been to several events in the building, and it's the event space, to get to it drags you.
You got to see the rest.
Right by the rest. So, and I think it becomes the opportunity for an entrance or an advertisement, so to speak, to say, hey, we've got this going on, and it goes in the mind, and well, my relatives come to town, this might be a good thing to do, especially on a cold winter night or afternoon, right?
That's really our hope, for sure.
So I think it's awesome. It is an incredible jewel that we have right here in Bismarck for the entire state of North Dakota, and certainly there'll probably be other centers that are going to develop from it, but we became kind of, you're the genesis, and have this here is incredible.
Well, thank you.
Beth, I thank you for joining me today on Bismarck Insights, and I'm glad to talk about this. And people, you know, just know that it's here, and please support them because it is very important for our community.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Bismarck Insights with Mayor Mike Schmitz. If you have specific topics or questions you'd like addressed in future episodes, email mschmitz@bismarcknd.gov. Or call the City of Bismarck at 701-355-1300. To learn more about the City of Bismarck, visit bismarcknd.gov or follow us on a variety of social media channels by searching BismarckND.gov. Bismarck Insights is a collaboration between Dakota Media Access and the City of Bismarck. You may find Bismarck Insights episodes on Government Access Channels 2 and 602, as well as on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV devices, on Radio Access 102.5 FM and on demand at freetv.org.